get to use it. And that's the way we look at it, so we take good care and custody of it. This is just a utility vehicle. Vote ambulances. Ambulances now are in the neighborhood fully outfitted of just under $250,000. Oh, everybody's taking notes. The test is not going to be that difficult. Relax. I see all these pens out. 22-inch tires. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. So 350 horsepower, Vortex something or other. Anyway, no. So somewhere in that neighborhood. We have a command vehicle with our shift. That's our shift commander's operational platform, loaded with tons of equipment from a technological standpoint, because we monitor everything from the air quality of what the guys are working in, how much air they have, how much time they've been in, you know, a lot of sophisticated communication equipment, things like that. That's very recent in our fleet. And then this bottom one is a pumper or an engine. Okay? So that vehicle runs, picked up on that. That runs about anywhere from about 350 to about 500,000, depending on how you outfit it. So when you watch what goes out on the street in a given call, and we're going to talk about this, when these two pieces go out, you can see the value of what's rolling out in just capital stock to get out to the street. And that doesn't include the equipment. This ambulance has probably in excess of about $125,000 worth of equipment in it.
Wow.
All right? One of the EKG machines, which you see on TV, costs me right now, they're running in the neighborhood of about $32,000 for 12 lead, fully functional, and I'll talk a little bit about what we do. So you can see you've invested a lot in this community. There's no doubt about it. And in the northwest suburban area, that is the case. One of the things that's important to note is we try to not, we duplicate this between communities, but we share a lot. We're probably the best at sharing. We wrote the book at sharing in the fire service between communities, and I'm not going to get into all that today, but we have very sophisticated plans from the local level to the regional level to the state level and even the federal level, because if you recall, we had Mundelein personnel that went to Katrina, and that was all pre-organized. So we've got it together. EMS, I want to talk about a little bit about this. I'm going to break this into two parts. We've got emergency medical services and fire. We certainly have the Fire Prevention Bureau and all the outreach stuff that we do, but these are the big backbones of our operation. EMS, we're associated with Condell Medical Center. That is our system hospital, and this is where I'm going to give you a little bit of how we exist. We belong to different trauma regions throughout the state under the Illinois Department of Public Health. That's kind of our governance. They're the folks that control what we do. Through that, they break us down into trauma regions. Through the trauma regions, they break us down to different EMS systems. We happen to have 3 EMS systems in Lake County. There's North Lake County, Condell, and the Highland Park system. And they're just nothing more than geographical areas, groups of fire departments who train their paramedics and put them back on the street. This is one of the smaller groups. They're a breakaway from Highland Park before I got here. And there's only 7 fire departments involved in it, about 300 paramedics in total. So it is one of the smaller ones, but it's also the fact, if you've been watching the newspapers, Advocate Condell is now a level 1 trauma center. All right, that's a big deal for us because we used to have to fly out our patients to trauma centers when the patient's condition would require that, and now we've got that right in our backyard. And they invested tons of dough into making that happen because it really, simplify it between a level 2 trauma center, which it was, and a level 1, they basically have to put a big staffing profile together in order to accommodate that immediate need. They have to have surgeons on staff 24/7, you know, the staff that supports that, all the different variables that go into that. So it's really critically important. Now, one of the things that people don't understand is the education of a paramedic and what it takes to get there. It is about a 3.5-year process, and most of that is post-collegiate now. So it's almost like going to grad school. Most of my candidates that I get now are college grads. It's becoming more and more the norm rather than the exception. It was the exception in my era. There's no question about that. So they are now coming out of college and going to school for about 3 years if they really stay focused on what's going on. The EMT program is about 400 to 700 hours of classroom time, followed up by a clinical field didactic or non-didactic experience that they have to go through as far as running that. The paramedic program is about 1,000 to 1,200 hours, followed by another internship for a year. So the medical techniques and the professionalism that's on the street now is like it's never been before, and it's only going to get better. I could go into all kinds of descriptions of what these guys can do in the field. It's remarkable. It's just about getting to surgery. It really is. When you look at what they have been taught and what they're expected to do. And they have to keep that up. I used to laugh at a commercial that Commonwealth Edison did. And I don't want to offend anybody from ComEd, but they used to do a nuclear plant thing where this guy had like sweat and tears because he has to go through and qualify for his job every year and make sure that he can do what he does. Our people do it every month. They have to go through proficiency testing training on a monthly basis and then recertify every 2 years, but they have to do it on this monthly basis in accumulated hours of continuing education and constant contact with the hospital, the doctors, the emergency room staff, you name it. So it's a very, very demanding profession from a standpoint of keeping up those professional techniques. You don't just take your degree and go somewhere with it. So it's really important that you understand that they go through all that. And I want to check my notes and make sure I got everything else, but I think that really covers it. And a lot of what we do is predicated on what is called clinical death and biological death. And that's the 4 to 6 minute window that you may have heard about over time. And that 4 minutes is the clinical death. That's when we have lost somebody, but we've still got time before biological death sets in at 6 minutes. So when we look at our response profile, this is on the EMS side. I'm going to tell you about the fire side in a minute here. When we look at our response profile, we have to factor in, can I get from point A to point B in that time? And that's from the time that you pick up 911, make the call, then it has to get dispatched to us, then we've got to get in the rigs and go, and then we've got to get there. So you can see how critically important, how fast 4 minutes goes. Now, luckily, on the EMS side, our average response time in this community is just under that 4 minute mark. So we're in pretty good shape. We manage with our automatic aid agreements and things like that, but as the community grows, it's going to get tighter and tighter. You got to factor traffic in and everything else, and I'm going to show you how we calculate some of this out in a minute. So that's kind of it on the EMS end. I'm going to go really fast here because Sybil told me I had to, so it's just like the pressure's on. The pressure's on. I mean, it really is. One of the things I get a question about the most is, and I can like race back to this other slide here if I go quick enough. Why does this thing come with this thing? Trustee Meyer's going to laugh here a little bit, but I always get this question. Now let me explain why a fire truck goes with an ambulance. And the explanation's in this picture. That is 2/3 of the gear that they have to take in for a working cardiac arrest into a home. Okay? Well, that's 2 guys, and you can see what they've got to take in, and that's not all of it. All right? And I deliberately didn't put all of it in there because I wanted to make sure I could say this is 2/3 of it. So what we designed when I got here is that we are really actually under a profile, a staffing profile that's required under a standard called National Fire Protection Association. I'm going to get into that. On how many people we have on vehicles. We're actually short 1 person per vehicle, and it's just a factual thing. It's not moaning or groaning or anything. What we designed was we created paramedic engines when I got here because what happened in the past was if we had 2 ambulance calls in this community and they both went to the hospital with the people that were on it, you had nobody else to back it up. So if you were the 3rd call, so sad, too bad. It all depended on whether or not people got back in. We do have a callback structure where we have people that come back in for some of the calls. So what we designed was we designed paramedic engines. So what happens is this is what goes into the house, takes care of the patient, but it's not, it goes to the hospital with them, but it's back on the vehicle. So those 2 guys can treat the patient, go to the hospital. The 2 paramedics that are on that fire engine, pumper, engine pumper, remember engine pumper, remember that picture? I cheat a lot. But they can come back, they're in town, they're not going anywhere. Now we get the next call, you're going to get the same level of care. I can wait for an ambulance to get there and treat you because it's going to take me some time to basically package you as a patient. So now we have a better 24/7 operation in having paramedics readily available, plus the fact that they can handle the next fire call that comes in. Now it's a little bit difficult with 2 people, but 2 is better than nothing because the big red fire trucks were sitting in the fire station not going anywhere. Now is there a cost borne by that? Sure. I'm burning more diesel fuel every year and putting wear and tear on those vehicles. But I will tell you, with fire apparatus, you'll do more damage to them letting them sit around than you do running them. You guys know that, especially the men in this room maybe don't want to be chauvinistic, but you know running equipment keeps it running. I mean, it's better for it. And what was happening was we were getting some breakdowns from idling and sitting around and doing nothing. So we're utilizing those pieces of apparatus better. Plus, we also know they're in a ready mode. They haven't been sitting for a week, not going on calls, and then all of a sudden we need them, and it goes when we get out the door. So that's the efficiency we created. But I get that question all the time because it was a departure from where this department was when I got here, but I think it's worked out